All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Forgive my voice. I have a cold, and it's making it so that I sound like RFK Jr. You're just going to have to deal with that today, though, and we will plow ahead, and I'll deliver the news for you. So right off the bat here, we're going to talk about Israel's new egregious genocidal lies. There was a bill that came up in the Senate to give more money to Israel. Wait until I tell you what happened with that bill. Oh, boy. So it was a little different in the Senate and in the House, but the backstory to this is insanity. So buckle up for that. After that, we'll get to Jon Stewart ticked off all the resistance liberals, and he managed to piss off the White House as well. That's an interesting story. I'll give you my take on that. And we have some special election results coming out of New York. That's interesting because it perhaps is going to forecast what happens in the 2024 election. Then we'll get to Jordan Peterson decides to take a shot at Joe Biden. That's fun. Barbara Lee calls for a $50 an hour minimum wage. You heard me right. $50 an hour. We'll get to that. Don't worry. Got a lot to say about that one. And RFK Jr.'s campaign is allegedly imploding. He had 14 top staffers leave recently. I'm going to go through this article that breaks it all down, and then I'll lay out for you, is this like a real issue with his campaign, or is it a classic hit job? Which, I mean, to keep it real, they always do this with candidates they don't like. Oh, they have high turnover in their campaign. Oh, they're very mean to their staffers. We've seen it a million times. In this instance, is it real or is it just a hit job? So we'll talk about all that and much, much more. Everybody, please do me a big favor. Subscribe to the channel. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. We're trying to get to 2 million subs, then eventually get that next plaque and hit the 10 million sub number. I don't know what percentage of YouTubers ever hit that 10 million sub number, but we would like to be one of them, and you grow it one at a time. So hook a brother up with a sub. And by the way, much love and thank you to everybody who supports this channel on Patreon. That link's below because I've never had a conversation with an advertiser, and you guys make that possible. So thank you to everybody who donates $1 a month or $2 a month or $10 a month. It really means the world. And anybody else who would like to support the channel, that link is below. Support independent media. I'm one of, I don't know, I might be the only one who has never had a conversation with an advertiser. I'm very, very proud of that fact. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the other day in the Senate, a bill came up to give more money to Israel. To be clear, it's a bigger bill than that. I believe it's $95 billion in total. About $60 billion would go to Ukraine, $14 billion would go to Israel, and the rest would go to the Indo-Pacific region, Taiwan specifically, to try to help them, ward off China. That's the idea behind it. So this bill comes up in the Senate. Now, originally, this bill was supposed to be packaged together with border security. But what happened is they negotiated a deal in the Senate, and then Trump came out in a rally and said, MAGA Republicans, kill that bill. Kill that bill. And they said, yes, sir. And they turned around and killed that bill. Even though the Democrats basically said to the Republicans, we're just going to accept all of your ideas on the border. We're just going to go full right wing on the border. They had that in the bill. And then Trump still said, kill it because I don't want to give Biden a win. Okay. So as a result of Trump's move, the border portion of the bill is totally dead. So now there's a vote on just the aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. This comes up in the Senate. And here's what happened. So first, let's go to this speech from Chris Van Hollen, Democratic senator, on the floor. Here's what he said about sending more money to Israel. Listen to this.
Madam President, I want that to sink in. Kids in Gaza are now dying from the deliberate withholding of food. In addition to the horror of that news, one other thing is true. That is a war crime. It is a textbook war crime. And that makes those who orchestrate it war criminals. So now the question is, what will the United States do? What will we do? What will President Biden do? President Biden must take action in response to what is happening.
Crystal clear. These are war crimes. The Israeli government are war criminals. They're starving people. We're complicit in that. I mean, he is correct. He is raging here, and he is correct. Well, guess what? He turned around and voted in favor of sending $14 billion more dollars to Israel. More weapons to Israel. You can't make this stuff up. This guy is like corporate Democrat politics personified. I'm going to say the right thing. I'm going to make it clear that I get it. And then I'm going to turn around and vote the wrong way anyway. So The bill the Senate voted on went 66-33 to advance it. By the way, we also got in this bill a ban on UN RWA funding. Remember, that's the arm of the UN that helps out Palestinian civilians and gives them humanitarian aid. We banned the money from going there based on a rumor that 12 of the 30,000 people who work for it are affiliated with Hamas. And by the way, Israel presented no evidence to actually prove that. So this bill would also ban UN RWA funding. It makes an exception allowing the U.S. to set aside more arms for Israel and removes requiring the president to notify Congress. So in other words, go ahead and send them more weapons, but we don't even want to do any oversight. Don't even tell us about it. And it imposes stricter scrutiny over Gaza aid. In other words, let's send less money to the Palestinians who are currently on the receiving end of a genocide. The only Democrats who voted no, Bernie Sanders and Jeff Merkley. Is astonishing. To send $14 billion more to Israel in the midst of what they're doing right now, that should honestly get your ass locked up. Because everybody knows. You can see it. If you have eyes and you have ears and you follow this stuff, even at a basic cursory level, you know, oh, this is purposeful massacring and starving of civilians. And if you say, oh, I'm going to send $14 billion more to John Wayne Gacy, or to, I don't know, Charles Manson, fill in the blank to whatever fucking serial killer you want to think of, everybody be like, oh, so you're complicit in the crimes of Charles Manson or John Wayne Gacy, right? He even knows it, and then he said, here, let's send $14 billion more. This is insanity. I've never seen anything like this before. Now, by the way, so this gets through the Senate. Thank God this bill dies in the House. I don't even think Mike Johnson is going to bring it up for a vote. Now, to be clear, and everybody needs to understand this, it's not like Mike Johnson and the Republicans are like, we must not send Israel any more money because they're doing a genocide. No, to them, the egregious part of the bill is actually the $60 billion in Ukraine aid. They're against the Ukraine aid, but funny enough, they actually say, we want to send more money to Israel. The $14 billion is not enough. We want to send them way more than that. So they're blocking it for all the wrong reasons, but I'll take it. I'll take it because not another penny to Israel. This is insanity that we're even having this conversation. So you had the State Department slimy weasel boy gremlin, Matt Miller. He was taking some questions on this. And listen to this. This is disgusting.
What levers have you used?
So we have used diplomatic levers. The secretary
that
has...
That means the secretary and the president and you and Kirby and whoever else standing up and saying, wagging your finger and saying that that's not really leverage.
We have engaged with them on at a multitude of levels at this administration. And
the question is, hey, what leverage are you using against Israel to stop them from now plowing through Rafah, bombing Rafah, and trying to displace Palestinians from Rafah, which is the last place where over 1 million Palestinians are, and there's civilians, and they have nowhere else to go. So what leverage are you using to get them to not now do an incursion into Rafah as well and kill massive numbers of Palestinians? That's the question. And this weaselly, slimy little freak, look at how he answers.
As you look at the list that we just went through with Humera, we have seen them take steps at our urging that have had real tangible impact, but they have not been enough.
But what levers have you actually used?
I think that when the United States of America stands up and says something publicly, it matters.
But you haven't. But you haven't said that there are any consequences.
To my point, we have seen
in terms of money or military assistance, right?
But we have seen, because of the policies we have pursued, we have seen improvements along these specific areas. We have seen tangible improvements. Again,
okay, but I'm just asking you what leverage have you used? What leverage have you brought to bear?
I just went through it.
What have you gone?
I think the words of the President of the United States, the words of the Secretary of State matter. And we have seen,
the top,
and we have seen leverage? And we have seen the government of Israel respond to it. Not always in the way that we want, not always to the degree that we want or to the level that we want, but our interventions, we believe, have had an impact, and we will continue to pursue them because we believe.
Okay.
So in other words, we're not using any leverage at all. Sometimes the president comes out and does his little finger wagging session, and he said recently, I think Israel's response has been a little over the top. Oh, over the top? That's you exerting leverage? No, exerting leverage, as Matt Miller points out here, would be, we're going to cut off your money. We're going to cut off your weapons. We're going to allow a condemnation through at the UN. We're going to sanction your ass, including top government officials. By the way, they considered sanctioning Ben-Gvir and Smotrich for their genocidal comments, but they decided against it. So what leverage are you actually using? You're not using anything. You're doing fake PR ass-covering, finger-wagging press conferences, knowing it's going to change nothing on the ground. Knowing that. And the fact that you still send money and weapons means you are okay with and complicit in the genocide of innocent Palestinians, which is now happening day in and day out, and has been for months. So we also have this. Now this goon, this White House goon, was asked a similar question, and here's how he responds.
I want to make it clear here. This is a sovereign nation. They plan their military operations, and they conduct their military operations, and they make the choices. It's not like we give them a homework assignment, and they have to then turn in their plan to us for grading. We have said that from our perspective, as a friend of Israel and as a supporter of their efforts to defend themselves, we would expect that any plan for going into Rafah would properly account for the now more than 1 million civilians that are seeking refuge down there.
But it's not going to, because none of what they've done to this point has protected civilians. That is blatantly obvious. And he knows that. And if they're a sovereign nation, so they get to make their own decisions, okay, stop sending my money over there. And stop sending your money. And stop arming them, which they then use to turn around and carpet bomb babies. This is not too much to ask. This is very, very basic. God, these people, there's not enough money in the world to make me act like that. I wouldn't be able to sleep a wink for the rest of my life thinking about the harm, the material harm that you're doing in this world. Then we get this from Politico. The Biden administration won't punish Israel for a Rafah military operation that doesn't protect civilians. 3 U.S. officials told us no reprimand plans are in the works, meaning Israeli forces could harm civilians in the city with no American consequences. Oh, you don't say. You mean the stuff that has been happening throughout the entire slaughter so far will continue to happen? No matter how egregious, no matter how blatant, no matter how brazen, no matter how over the top the Israeli genocidal forces are? You don't say. I mean, this point is there's literally nothing Israel can do that would make the U.S. cut off money and weapons and stop sucking them off. There's nothing they could do. I mean, they've done everything short of, we're just going to drop a nuke. They've done everything short of that. And by the way, according to some Israeli government officials, that was on the table earlier on in the conflict, even though that'd be idiotic because Gaza's like right there by Israel. There'd be some nuclear winter fallout for Israel proper. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. I don't know, but they've done everything short of that. Look at this from Axios. Israel's ultra-nationalist finance minister is blocking a U.S.-funded flour shipment to Gaza that Netanyahu had promised Biden would be allowed in the enclave. So let me ask again. Biden, are you going to do anything about this? Or are you just going to sit there and bleed? We know the answer. You're going to do nothing. They are blocking a U.S.-funded flour shipment. You know, so that Palestinians can eat bread and not starve to death. They're going to block it, and you're going to do what in response? Dickie McGee's axe. You're going to do absolutely nothing. You're going to sit there and watch as Palestinians starve to death and they go thirsty. And Israel continues to block 70% of the humanitarian aid going into Gaza. By the way, South Africa went to the International Court of Justice again and begged for an injunction, citing, an imminent continuation of the genocide, this time in Rafah, with what their plans are. There's also top Israeli government officials now going on TV. One was on Sky News earlier and was saying, we don't have any plans to protect civilians in Rafah. I don't know how much clearer they could be in broadcasting to the world their intentions. I don't know how much clearer they could be. Don't take my word for it. Go look at IDF TikTok to know what the whole plan is, what the whole purpose is of what's going on here. Go look at that snuff channel, which is run by the IDF, where they brag and congratulate themselves for like scalping Palestinian grandmas to death. This is from a Washington Post story about Israelis blocking aid trucks for Palestinians. Every explosion in Gaza raises a cheer. Quote, "Dead, dead, dead Arabs," one camper shouts at a roaring volley of outgoing fire. Then she notes the presence of a reporter. "Hamas," she corrects herself. Right, yeah, Hamas. So let's recap here what's going on. You have these Democrats virtue signaling and finger wagging and saying, these are war criminals. These are bad things that this government is doing. Let's send them $14 billion more dollars. You have Biden saying, their response has been a little over the top, but go ahead and do whatever you want in Rafah, even if it means increasing the pace of the genocide. All of that is going on. We're still sending money. We're still sending weapons. And we just got an update on the actual impact of what's happening here. Look at this. Euromed Monitor, the human rights group. There's now 36,671 Palestinians that have been killed by Israel. Of that number, 33,590 are civilians. You do the math on that. Tell me what percentage that is that are innocent civilians. To be more specific, 14,031 are children and 8,122 are women. We've now surpassed 70,000 injured in a place where the hospital system has basically collapsed. They don't have anesthesia. They're doing amputations on children without anesthesia. Women are giving birth in totally unsanitary conditions with no support whatsoever. Over 70,000 injured and barely any functioning hospitals. 127 journalists have been killed. That's the most deadly conflict for journalists in history. 2 million of the 2.3 million Palestinians are displaced. 87,900 homes are completely destroyed. 213,000 are partially destroyed. North Gaza basically doesn't exist anymore, and now they're in the midst of making it so South Gaza doesn't exist either. 379 schools have been damaged. 1,830 factories have been damaged. 522 mosques have been damaged. 3 churches have been damaged. 732 healthcare professionals have been attacked, including 317 deaths, 415 injured. 246 healthcare facilities have been attacked, including 28 hospitals, 65 clinics, and 153 ambulances. There are 199 heritage sites that have been attacked, 176 civil defense workers, and the number of Palestinians who are hostages and political prisoners, 2,890. What else is there to say? If Biden can look at this scale and this scope of destruction and still say, we're not going to do anything to stop them from now plowing through Rafah and killing more massive numbers of civilians and displacing them further and completing the genocide and the ethnic cleansing. If he could look at that and say, of course I'm not going to stop sending money and weapons, there's literally nothing they could do that would make him stop sending money and weapons. It's beyond disgraceful. It's beyond shameful. I've never seen anything quite this grotesque in all my time on this planet. Usually in a conflict, there's some degree of plausible deniability. We thought we were doing the right thing. We meant well. We're trying our best to limit civilian casualties, etc. In most conflicts, there is some cover story. There is some rationalization and justification that sounds somewhat plausible. Not this one. This one is the clearest thing I've ever seen. And I don't know how anybody can come to any other conclusion.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.